and D&D was what they played. So I came along to a session and just thought it was awesome.
It's great to speak with you today, Neil.
So my outrageous coffee breath.
Good. And so you mentioned that you grew up playing D&D.
Yeah.
Why?
Why did I choose D&D?
Yeah, like
how did I find it?
What drew you to D&D?
So I used to get really badly bullied for years, actually, in school and even drama classes and things like that I used to go to. I felt very different from a lot of people. I was very academic. I was a huge, voracious reader. And for a long time, I kind of felt very out of place. I come from a place called Birmingham, which was at the time a bit of a rough town. It was a bit tough. And I was into like ballet and theatre and things like that. And there weren't many kids that I really identified with in terms of my tribe and all that kind of stuff. And I found my geeks, and they were all intellectuals. A lot of them were bullied, like me, and they all played D&D, and they invited me along. And I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know much about it. I used to play role-play games when I was a bit younger, like Dragon Warriors and Warhammer and things like that. And D&D was what they played. So I came along to a session and just thought it was awesome. Thought it was great because it gave you this sense of creating a story together collaboratively. And it also helped bond myself and my geek friends. And we were still lifelong friends. I still speak to some of them now after 8 years of not being at school. And it was just a really wonderful time of being able to create an adventure and go to a place and use your imagination, use your intellect in a really creative, positive outlet. I really liked it. I also liked the idea of playing other people's lives and, creating that sense of, this is my character's life and this is how they act and da-da-da-da-da. So I think it also led into the fact that I was really interested in acting, in film especially, and theatre especially. And it just made sense to me. It's like, okay, yeah, I get to be somebody else's life and have fun doing that. So that's why D&D. Yeah.
For sure. And were there any specific characters you like to play most as? Like I always play as a half drow, for instance.
No, I think a drow were very cool. I like drow a lot. I think they were very sexy. And I was a big fan of Drizzt Do'Urden and all that kind of stuff. With Forgotten Realms and all those kind of things. So I liked the idea of being an outsider, but flipping the narrative of what people think you should be like. Do you know what I mean? Because for a long time when I was growing up, I think people had a lot of preconceptions about me, especially that I was a bit of a dummy, even though I'm not. And I think I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about I'm not what I look like, you know? So, but I'm also rogue for life. I think is a big thing. I like I'm a bit of a loot goblin.
For
and
sure.
I still play like a loot goblin as well. So that's very much my cup of tea.
Love to hear it.
Yeah.
So, to go along with this idea of storytelling and collaboration, do you approach D&D and acting with a sense of play?
Absolutely. I think you have to, otherwise what's the point?
For sure. And does this change for you with projects like Baldur's Gate 3 where there are, heavier themes at play?
Well, I mean, it's still play. I think people have maybe people that don't know much about acting or about the work from an outsider's point of view might have a misconception that doing a heavy scene, which does take a lot out of you, which is engaging, which does require a lot of work, is somehow gives you a bad feeling. It's not true at all. If anything, actually, the heavier scenes, the ones that really require a lot of methodology, craft work, rehearsal, patience, and application of good work ethic, that somehow that's a bad thing. If anything, actually, for me as an actor, I relish those complicated scenes, those scenes where nuance, subtlety, really getting into the skin of the character, really living the fictional truth of the moment, which is demanding in some ways, is actually very uplifting in many other ways, because you feel like I've honored that character's story. I had that moment. You look back in retrospect and go, that was a perfect take, which you're not aware of when you're doing it, right. But it feels so good that afterwards when you review it or when the director reviews it, you know that you hit it, you nailed it, which we did for many, many scenes, because I had some great directors and amazing writers. And Larian, a huge testament to Larian for that, as well as Pit Stop Productions, who are the directors of it. I think once you've accomplished something like that and you look back and go, wow, we really got it, right. Collaboratively. It's a beautiful feeling. So I think, yeah, you have to, it's a sense of play still. It's just a very mature play.
Right. And a sense of catharsis.
It's definitely cathartic, I think, when you realize that what you did was absolutely right for the character. You have to love your characters. You can't judge your characters. You also can't dictate what you think the character should do. You have to go on what the character is going to do in the story. So for me, all the endings, all the possibilities were equally interesting, good, positive for me as an actor, because that's the fictional choice in a branching narrative especially. It's kind of interesting. That's that choice for that character in that moment. This is this choice for this character in the moment. There is no kind of like preferred ending I have. I don't have any headcanon for after the project, for instance, because I played every possibility of the character, and it was all awesome. It was just fun. Yeah, it was great.
And so I also heard that you drew on 3 different friends of yours.
Yeah.
When you were developing Astarion's mannerisms and voice. Is this something that you often do as an actor? And or was there something about Astarion that made you want to invoke your own pals?
It's kind of half and half, really. I often look at either real-world people or people I've seen in cafes or whatever, or if somebody walking on the street, I've seen an interesting kind of like mannerism or habit. Also, my friends are very useful because I know my friends really well. So I often look for real-world interesting examples of humanity, because obviously what we do, regardless whether we're playing an ape, which I've done before in the past, it's all amorphosized or humanized in that way. So I often look for real world examples as inspiration. My 3 friends, one of whom sadly passed away in February, Leendert van Nimbergen, were very dear are and were very dear to me. So I just thought it was interesting, and what I liked about them that had a similarity of how I felt about Astarion. I thought it was very interesting to do that. And actually, Leendert died in February, and it's accidentally turned into a very beautiful thing to honour him and the character that I'm so close to and I love so much. That's kind of special for me. Ruben Kay, who is a good mate of mine, I've known since my catering days, is a beautiful performer, very theatrical, very funny. And he was a great source of inspiration for the theatricality of Astarion. And Giles Foreman, who's my mentor but also my friend, has a very interesting way of looking at people and as an unapologetically piercing gaze and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, these were just little inspiration points of going, okay, well, I know them well, I love them very much, so let's see if I can blend that into. Heisenberg, for example, I used Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart for his naturalism, and also the mania of, sorry, I completely blanked on his name now, Nicolas Cage.
Right.
For different aspects, it was like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting and fun. I played a fish called Fibonacci. I used a mixture of David Attenborough, Mel Brooks, and Brian Blessed. So you end up talking like that! Hello, who's a good tenor, who's a good biped? So you have this really interesting blend of things. I don't rely on, must find somebody to do it. It's just very useful because it's interesting to me. I get to play more. But also I used a stray black cat that lived in my garden. As part of Astarion. Right. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's many different ways to terrible metaphor. Skin the cat. So yeah.
For sure. And so I guess going a little bit deeper into this idea of, I guess like real life experiences and whatnot. If there are so many elements of Astarion that pull from real life people, experiences, and emotions, do you see Baldur's Gate 3 as an escapist fantasy? Is what we consider fantasy escapism truly an escape when it can be like an expression of our inner lives?
Of course it is. I think all storytelling can teach and also give alleviate some of the difficulties that life presents. It also can teach us about life. That's the whole point about storytelling. Right. It is an escapism, but it doesn't mean that you're forgetting your life completely. It actually, in many instances, people I've met, and actually the rest of the cast have met, and Larian has spoken to, people have found great solace in these stories. They felt seen by these stories. They felt identified by these stories, and actually gave them a source of strength, so that when they go back to their lives, they went, well, actually, I don't feel so alone now. Or, oh, other people also feel like this. Or they reach out to communities that grow around these projects, and they talk to other people who's also had, sadly, in many cases, these very difficult experiences or traumatic experiences in their lives. So I think stories are important because it's an escapism, but it also isn't fully escaping. It's actually, if anything, it's actually something that's very helpful. I think that's the point of stories, isn't it?
Yeah.
A shared human conscious collaboration.
For sure. I know.
Wow, it was early in the morning.
Yeah. Just coming out swinging.
Coming out swinging.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
I mean, it is what it is, we keep on going. And I think that's really kind of the beauty of the game, is that you can start a new playthrough and make new choices, and the possibilities are endless.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today. This was lovely.
Thanks for asking.
And